Welcome to this very, very special edition of this new VIK Podcast. This is the very, very first time that we are doing a 100% live podcast with a very, very important guest. She has a lot of experience in South American wines. She has been studying everything. Almost everything, right?
That's true.
Yeah, and she knows a lot about South American wines, mainly Chile, Argentina, Uruguay now. Probably next will be Brazil.
No, I've already done Brazil.
Already done.
Bolivia.
Yeah. So all of them, great. So here we are with Amanda Barnes. It's okay, how my pronunciation?
Yeah, it's Barnes.
Barnes.
But sometimes I just say Barnes to make it easier.
So I will do it more kind of English accent. Barnes.
Barnes. Yes.
Okay. And master of wine, and a lot of journalists, right? Consultant. A lot of experience about wine. So great to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be your first guest in person.
Yes, thank you so much for your time. I know that also you have to pick the plane.
Yeah,
soon.
I have to hop over the Andes.
Yes, so we have a few minutes to talk. Just to start, and because you have this beautiful connection with South America, tell us about your experience. How has been for you this time now living in South America, now being part of this culture? Tell us about that amazing experience.
Well, I mean, for anyone who might guess from my accent, I'm British born in the south of England, but moved to Argentina in 2009. And so since then have been writing about the wine regions, as you said, of Argentina and Chile, but also started going to Uruguay, Brazil, Bolivia, Peru in those first years. And so I've really kind of grown up with South American wine. So even though I have the experience of being European and you know, spending a lot of time traveling around the continent of Europe in my teens and then also as an adult later, my wine journey has really been here. So since 2009, which is, I was in my early 20s then, and most of my kind of learning of wine has been, through the winemakers of Chile and Argentina and Uruguay as well, and really spending time with them in the vineyards and the wineries. So my experience has been quite magical. I've loved it. And that's why I'm still here. I think South America in general is so exciting in terms of the way that the wine industry is continuously changing, evolving, innovating, but also really refocusing on authentic expression from our own terroirs here and not necessarily looking to mimic other regions. So I think it's a really exciting time to be here.
Wow, that's great. And this time in Argentina, spending a lot of time here in Chile too, Uruguay, Brazil. So now, what percentage of your heart is South American?
I'd say
hard question.
At least 70%. I'd say I still have some very British traits, and I'd consider myself more European than British. Really, there's still some lingering around, but I normally arrive on time, so I'm still more British in that in that aspect.
No, but great to have you here and to share the everything about your experience, because it's different to live here and have the experience to visit the wineries, to spend time with the different winemakers and all that. So that's why that question about your experience, and because normally the focus from a winery like us or a winemaker is different from your point of view, because you have a little bit more open view, right? And it's amazing. So let's jump into the different vintages. Let's talk about the 2022 as a year, as a vintage. Probably you have experience in Argentina. Also here in Chile, there's an impression that the 22 was a little bit warmer than the 21 in terms of the temperature. But the reality or the numbers in terms of the weather broadcast, right, is that the 22 in the last 100 years has been the 19th warmest, but the 21st the third warmest, so more warm than the 22. In terms of the average higher temperature, 21 is 1 degree Celsius over the 22. The minimum temperature, the same thing. So finally, there was kind of an impression that the 22 was a little bit warmer, but the numbers say totally another description. So what's your impression about the 22 regarding to your experience in Argentina and Chile?
I think 22 overall, it's difficult to generalize even a country like Chile and even harder to generalize between Chile and Argentina. But I think 22 is definitely one of those vintages that seems a lot more variable. And one of those vintages where we've seen different challenges, quite significantly in different areas. I think 21 perhaps felt a bit more consistent. But I think 22 is a vintage where you really see the skill of the winemaker coming through and a real kind of decision-making process in terms of making the wine of the style that they can chase in a vintage like that. I mean, how was your experience in VIK? How did you feel there in the vineyard, I think?
Well, for us, it was very challenging. In fact, thinking about the 22, it was a little bit similar to the 25 in terms that there was a wave in December into 22, December 21, that was, but for the vintage 22, the temperature increased. So that's maybe why some people got this impression of hot or warmest summer. But the end of the summer and the autumn and the spring were coolest. So for us, that wave, it wasn't that or important because we have this wind that come from the ocean and refresh our property. So it wasn't something big for us. And we, in the 21st and the 22, we start to harvest a little bit earlier, managing the vineyard to ripe the tannins before. So having this wind and managing the vineyard in order to avoid to wait a long time to get the ripeness of the tannins, we keep this wine, for me, very fresh, expressive, fine tannins, very small tannins, but mainly because we manage the vineyard to ripe in a shorter time, just in case the summer will be warmer or hot, because at the beginning we have this kind of a little bit more temperature. Yeah. That for us it wasn't important, but it was that impression in general. So what happens in your place and what happens in general, so you have to take decision at that time. And I think it was the right one in terms that now we can see that the wine is fresh.
Yeah, I think there's a lovely florality to the VIK 22 that we're tasting now. And I think that none of the fruit feels, there's no jamminess or over ripeness to the fruit at all. It feels very kind of nicely balanced. And this nice kind of sweet floral note that's coming through, which does kind of hint towards, a slightly kind of warmer, perhaps start to the year, that shows very nice balance. And I think those tannins are, as you said, in this vintage, very quite silky and subtle.
Yeah, what we look for is this kind of fine, small tannins that they have this vibrancy. They're like moving. That gives the wine tension, electricity, something like that to describe. It's a wine that it's in motion. It's not. It's multi-dimensional. Yeah. So that's a beautiful thing. It has a beautiful lens, and then the nose is so clean, so expressive. It's about Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon. This one was 26 months in barrel, so imagine it's a long time.
It was very approachable, though. Yeah. I mean, within the 3 years, not even that since being picked. It's incredibly approachable already to be drinking. I would, if I had, and I do actually have 22 in my cellar because we were going to do this virtually. So I will be holding it. But I also think, you could quite happily kind of drink it now today. It's showing very nicely.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, the tannins are so fine. That's the reason. How we have been working in order to get these tannins in the grapes, let's say from the skin, and how we work the barrels today. Well, this wine also has 14% has been in clay pots.
Okay.
So it's the biggest percentage ever in VIK, because the first one was the 21, and that was 10%. So also helps the clay pots helps to have this kind of minerality, this expression, but also less tannins from the oak and more integrated with the tannins from the wine, right? But it's mainly that we have been learning how to manage the fields and also how we work the tannins during the pump overs, just to extract the more fine tannins and not everything.
Yeah.
Which is, each winery has their own techniques, but to extract just the one that they're ready to go, it's very detailed. We do more than 6 pump overs per day, short time, just to extract a little bit of the tannins and not over extract.
Absolutely. One thing I think that's very interesting that I know you do is with your Cabernet Franc, isn't it, where you cut off the edges of the bunch, the shoulders of the bunch.
The shoulders and the
Did you have to do that more so for the 22 vintage, or the same as normal?
Well, that's a good question. And it's the first time that we talk about it. It's something that we do every year. What changes when? Because it's very important, or that helps to reduce the yields, and also it's kind of a green harvest, right? Yeah. So when we do it, it's important, and normally it's early in the season, because the bunch at the beginning, before the grapes grow and they touch each other, you have enough room for the scissors to go in and to don't damage the grapes. So you don't have much a big window for that. But when you do it a little bit earlier then you reduce the yields, you concentrate the flavor in the middle of the bunch, and then that helps to get the ripeness. If you do it 4 days before, you will arrive 4 days before at the end. Mm-hmm. So, but if for example, it was a rainy year, so you have water in the soil, and if you do that 4 days early, then the vine could get a little bit more vigorous, and then you won't have the effect at the end. So this is a lot of different factors that you have to consider, but that's a very important cultural work that we do for Cap Franc, and it's one of the key to have this kind of tannins, and you see the also the flavors, the nose. There's no pyracinic, pyracinic aspect, and that's very important. We learned that techniques from the people that they produce table grapes.
Oh, okay.
So yes, if you go to the supermarket and you buy a bunch of table grape, normally they're like
round,
a ball, round, but the bunches are not round.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they cut the tail and the shoulders. So once I asked why, and they tell me that they had a lot of years ago, like we're talking about 20 years ago, they had a lot of complaints from people that they taste the one in the middle and they were more sweet than
the shoulders.
Yes. So that's why they cut it to have something more homogeneous.
Yeah.
So then I was, that also happens in the bunches for wine, and then we did all the trials, and it's like that. I can show you pictures.
I think it's a very smart technique. I mean, it obviously reflects a lot of the hard work and extra kind of investment that you make in the vineyard at VIK, but it seems, a very smart technique. I know some other producers that have started doing it with their top wines as well, and have seen really good results.
Really, wow, great! That's fantastic to know. I didn't hear that before, and it's hard.
It's a lot of work.
A lot of work. You need people for that, but the commitment is quality. So you have this kind of result when you work at that level of details. So let's talk about the innovation for you. Today, we were talking about South America, and one of the things is that we have this kind of, we always change, we always evolve as a continent, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay. It's a culture that we change, we are open to change if we need it. Sometimes in other places, they continue their tradition or something. But here, we have that kind of, okay, we need to change this and that, and we are open to that. But innovation, how important has been innovation in this?
I think South America is very innovative. And I think, part of, exactly what you said about not having rules, not having restrictive appellations. I think that's a key part to being able to innovate. And I think we've seen it a lot more recently. 15 years or so, I think there was still a tendency to kind of look to other producers and other regions, and rather than kind of innovate within. And I think partly, in Argentina, interestingly, I think part of the innovation has actually been a response to crisis or restrictions in terms of not having the ability to, import concrete tanks, for example, and having to make your own, and therefore having the freedom to make them in your own, shape and style and size. And obviously, your example at VIK is a different example. You could import and, you could have access to all the kind of cement tanks in the world. But, that decision to innovate and make it with your own, your own amphora, with your own clay in the vineyard, I think is part of that kind of pioneering attitude that you find often in South America, whether that's by necessity or whether that's by, a decision to innovate. But I think, I do think we see lots of exciting innovations. And also, I'm mostly excited to be seeing the innovations in the world of white wines more recently as well. I think South America is a red producing continent. Argentina and Chile are red producing nations. But it's been really nice to see, a development in lighter kind of reds and rosés and white wines really coming to the fore in recent years. And I know that's something that's perhaps going to come to the fore at VIK in the future as well. I think innovation's at the heart here for sure.
Yeah, well, we are working on our white wine, so that will be another conversation. And,
I'll have to come back for that tasting.
Yes, please, of course. It will be very connected to nature as Stonevik, but not up in the mountain because that's only Stonevik.
Yeah.
But in terms of the concept, that the wine also will be connected to nature in a different way, but will be like that. And also we have this new kind of innovative red, the Cabernet Nouveau,
exactly.
which is a red to drink in another moment. Normally you drink reds, right?
And those kind of chillable reds, I think, is something quite new here and something that was really quite necessary. Because I think, historically we did have those kind of chillable reds, although they probably weren't chilled back then. But, the kind of Pais and lighter Campesino grapes that you'd get in the South and like the Criollas that you get in Argentina, those are all much lighter styles of really kind of quaffable reds that you would have with soda water or even with ice. And so then we've kind of done that whole period of much richer kind of Bordeaux style reds. And now it's really exciting to see everyone, embrace slightly more chillable reds like your Cabernet Nouveau and lighter styles of red as well, which really suits the climate here. We do have beautiful cold winter evenings in which you want a nice kind of bold red or, maybe with your asado, you want some nice kind of richer reds. But, largely we have a sunny, warm climate where it's quite nice to have something chilled and fresh.
Yes, that's true. That's why we start with this when we saw that there was a kind of a window or where we were missing a Cabernet Sauvignon that we can drink in that way.
Yeah.
Normally you find a Pinot Noir or Pais, but there was no Cabernet.
Yeah.
And also this Cabernet helps to some people that sometimes they go like, no, Cabernet Sauvignon, it's too structured for me, a big wine for me. And this is very fine and beautiful, easy. So maybe it's the way to start with Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah, it's a nice gateway.
It's to open the door to our next Cabernet Sauvignon. So that's why we get into this new kind of red and that innovation, at least for us. You know? Well, something that I will get into is, well, your book. It's everybody in the world knows about this beautiful book. That experience, you know, for you, tell us a little bit about that experience, because it is very unique.
Yeah. So the South America Wine Guide is kind of, I mean, I like to say it's the product of 10 years of research, and then it was 2 years of writing and editing. So it covers Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Brazil, Bolivia, and Peru. And I started writing it in 2019, but was already kind of planning and thinking about it in 2017 and 18. And I decided to self-publish because I really wanted to include all of those countries. And when I spoke to regular publishers, they said, well, you can do Chile and Argentina, but, you know, Uruguay can only have like 5 pages as a side trip from Buenos Aires and, you know, forget about the other countries. So in the end, I decided that I wanted to do it completely independently, to have the freedom and the space and the, you know, the creativity that you can have without the rules, you know, very much in a South American kind of New World vibe. I wanted to do it my own way without kind of, you know, following the limitations that traditional publishers give you. So it was 2 years of kind of hair pulling and tussling and writing and designing and editing. And then, and that wasn't easy. I'm not going to lie. It's not an easy process. But the really pleasurable part of it was working, you know, with so many winemakers and agronomists and really kind of listening and learning from their experience to be able to, you know, build quite a strong backbone of information and research, and then hopefully deliver it in a very easy to digest and readable way, with lots of beautiful imagery and photos and colour, because I think wine is colourful and exciting and should be kind of fun and pleasurable. So, you know, that's why it's by Amanda Barnes and Amigos, is because I wouldn't have been able to, you know, have written the first page without having all the kind of input and support of producers from all over the continent, and lots of friends as well, who just kind of gave me tips and recommendations. And my great friend Catherine, for example, who held my hand through the printing process, which is a whole other experience in itself. And then the best bit is obviously the birth, when you kind of see it coming off the print run and, you know, in paper. And, you know, I'm writing another book now exactly for that reason. I just can't wait for the birth. I'm ready to kind of get through the pregnancy and looking forward to the birth when it comes to light.
Yeah, and also that has a lot of details, not only in wine and wine regions and all that you described there. There are also, for example, the pictures and all. It's, you have to select this and that, and probably this one. Then you change it for this one. So it's not easy that way.
It's a real process. It's really pleasurable. It's also difficult, and you have to make lots of kind of brave decisions by yourself. And you know that some people won't like them, but other people's will. And so long as it's, you know, something that you stand by as your own decision made, I think that's fine. One of the biggest challenges were the maps, in fact. So that was a real painstaking process in which my cartographer and I, you know, looked at lots of different kind of maps, and I sent these preliminary maps to winemakers and said, can you just make sure that your vineyard's marked on there, or kind of cross it out? And, you know, and so it was this real kind of back and forth process of trying to make these maps. And hopefully that's going to get a bit easier for the next edition, because I think there's a bit more information available now, and wineries are prioritizing that a bit more today, which is great. But I spoke to Hugh Johnson about maps when I had an interview with him at some stage during my process of the book. And he obviously was the one who started the World Atlas of Wine, which was the first book to really start mapping out wine regions around the world. And I asked him, how did you do this? And he was like, oh, well, I posted off these maps, you know, to the winemakers, and they kind of like plotted it on. I was like, I'm doing exactly the same thing. It was so reassuring, but obviously I have the benefit that I could be doing it by email and WhatsApp rather than the kind of slow postal service back then.
Yeah, so the technology helps a little bit in this. That's incredible. I just something take my attention when you said that there's some people that they love it and some don't. It's something that happens to us too as a winemaker. So normally we have to make wine for more people because we need to sell wine. But anyway, there's some people that sometimes don't like what you are doing, and it's something that makes you make questions on what you're doing, and you learn sometimes from that people why I don't make him or her get into this, and you learn from that. There's something of that also in this experience.
Always, yeah, of course. I think when you're producing something, whether you're making a wine or whether you're writing a commentary or sharing anything that's a personal opinion or a personal choice in winemaking, you're always going to encounter people that don't like it, and that's fine. If everyone liked it, it'd probably be quite boring.
Yeah, it's good to have a different point of view sometimes. From now, let's get into that part of your background, Master of Wine. That's amazing. That I like from that is that you have that experience from different wines from all over the world. Well, you're very specialized in South America, but from all over the world. So that must be very, very interesting. I mean, we don't have that chance to taste that much. I would love to learn, but that should be a beautiful experience. So tell us a little bit about that, and then I would like to go to Cabernet Franc today.
Okay. From
that point of view. So tell us about your Master of Wine, and then let's jump into Cabernet Franc, and then we can describe a little bit the wine.
Okay, perfect. So the Master of Wine is a very in-depth, it's the most in-depth wine qualification that you can do. So it's minimum 5 years. On average, it takes, I think, about 10 years. And it's a very in-depth kind of process, like a PhD really, where you're focusing in on the theory of everything to do with wine. So from viticulture through winemaking, through business, through to kind of philosophy of wine. And then obviously there's a very important part, which is the tasting, which is all blind tasting, and being able to identify wines from all over the world and different styles, and not only being able to say, oh, well, this is clearly, a Chianti Classico for this reason, but also being able to talk about the qualities of a wine and where it might kind of fit in a commercial setting. So it's very interesting, and it's really hard work. I'm not going to lie. Yes. It's very intense, and you really have to be very focused and committed to it. You lose a lot of sleep, you lose a lot of friends. But when you get out the other end, it's very nice. You do meet lots of wonderful people in the industry. So it's a really interesting moment to be kind of focusing on that and struggling through as students with other people from around the world and from all kind of walks of life in wine. And then the final bit, which I think is probably for me, it was the most pleasurable in some ways, was the thesis, which I did mine on the Criolla family, which is something that I'm quite passionate about. And so that's your chance to do some kind of deep research into one topic. And again, it's not an easy process, but it's quite interesting. But I definitely learned a lot. And the reason I wanted to do the Master of Wine was also to make sure that I had a broad worldwide context to be able to talk about South American wine and to be able to, authoritatively put it into a global context. Sometimes I think we have a tendency here locally in South America to kind of live in a bubble. And especially in Argentina, they love to say that they have the best of everything. Less so in Chile, but the tendency is to very much kind of, know your bubble, love your bubble, and not necessarily look outside. So I just wanted to make sure that as a journalist, as a writer, as a communicator, that I had a global context and could really be informed to be able to communicate about South American wine from a kind of stronger position, and also to be able to levy some of that knowledge to discuss with producers here and to kind of progress together, which is the whole purpose. Yeah. And yes, Cabernet Franc, absolutely one of the most exciting things, movements I think happening in both Chile and Argentina, and also Uruguay, interestingly enough. And I think Cabernet Franc has kind of emerged as a bit of a Robin to the Batman of the main varieties. Like in Chile, obviously Cabernet Sauvignon is our main variety. Cabernet Franc shows a really beautiful alternative and a very different kind of face to that Cabernet grape. And then in Argentina, Cabernet Franc gives a really lovely different dimension to Malbec. And I think it's really exciting to see more Cabernet Franc come into your wines at VIK, because I think your place in particular actually really suits Cabernet Franc. And I think it's one of the most exciting grapes that I've tasted from the VIK property and portfolio. I think Cabernet Franc is really nicely suited to those kind of terroirs in Chile, which is somewhere in the middle. They're not kind of strictly Andean, they're not strictly coastal. They have a little bit of influence from both. And I think Cabernet Franc can really thrive in those climates.
Yeah. Well, thank you. This kind of, what do you think about this new perception of Cabernet Franc? It's arrived to stay, or it's just a moment? What do you think?
I think it's definitely here to stay. I mean, it's a very old grape variety, and we have, it's the backbone of everything in Bordeaux. Not everything in Bordeaux, but mainly the right bank. But it's such a key grape variety in Bordeaux. It's such a key variety in the Loire. We see it in lots of different places. I think it's definitely here to stay. And I don't think it's just a trend in South America. I think it's, the quality of Cabernet Franc we're getting. It's not, I don't see it as something that's a flash in the pan for a kind of quick dalliance with a different variety. I think and I think, this is probably a controversial opinion, but I think the Cabernet Franc of Chile will inform and improve the Carmenere of Chile, because I think learning to work with the kind of pepperiness and freshness that you get in Cabernet Franc is a really great way to think more about Carmenere in that direction. So I think Cabernet Franc will have a pivotal role to play, not only in the variety itself, but also in new approaches to some of the other Bordeaux varieties.
Yeah, a very interesting point of view, because in our case, for example, with La Puvelle, which is another label that we have, today the 22, for example, is 81% Cabernet Franc, Carmenere. So we have been moving La Puvelle to Carmenere, and one thing that we have been doing is working in the same way in the vineyard to avoid that kind of, like pitacinic aspect. And then today you taste that wine and you have that beautiful personality of the Carmenere without those green hints and with that blackberries and that spicy flavors around, but a little bit more. Well, we blended a little bit of Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon to give it more length at the end. But yeah, we have been working both in order to avoid that part. So to avoid that kind of pitacinic aspect. But yeah, going back to VIK 22, which is a blend of 79% Cap Franc and 21% Cabernet Sauvignon, 26 months in barrel. What will be the description, for example? We won't compare to the 21, but we
don't have it. You'll have to invite me back. We'll have to do a vertical. I'll accept. I think, as I said, I think it's got that lovely kind of, I think there's a nice florality to this vintage, but it's kind of like a sweet, kind of almost roses, like a slightly kind of sweeter flower. I think there's a nice bit of kind of, again, I find this as quite a pink wine in my mind. I often think of colours. I think there's a kind of a nice pink spice to it. There's slightly more kind of pink pepper and an exotic spice. And the fruit is lovely and fresh and quite soft and also quite red in nature rather than black for me. What do you think?
Well, I like that pink concept.
Pink is lovely.
So, yeah, for me, there's a lot of expression. It's very clean. And nose it's clean. And something that help or it's beautiful from this wine, it has been 26 months in barrel and it's not.
Oh, it's definitely not toasted at all. It's very subtly. It's nicely integrated.
It's super integrated, and this is something that we have been working very hard with our Barroir program in order to get this microcyclination to make these tannins polymerize and get together and being round and soft. You were saying that you were impressed that it's 22 and very
drinkable, yeah.
And no coffee, no chocolate, no kind of those toast flavors, because what we want is to show the purity, could we say, purity of the fruit, sure. And the spicy flavor from the grapes, the minerality from the Cabernet Franc, the fruit from the Cabernet Sauvignon, more than the toast flavor, right? Yeah. We toast very, very light. Let's say less than light when you buy barrels. You buy light, medium, and high toast, right? But we do less than light in order to avoid any of those flavors, because for us it's not a flavor that belongs to the wine. It's toast. Yeah. But we need the tannins from the barrels. We need the microcyclination to make them get polymerized, and so it helps to have this kind of fruit and pure or clean nose.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're in a very privileged position to be able to talk about oak, because obviously, as you can toast your own barrels, you have your own cooperage. You know, I think having this experience within to be able to make those decisions, you can really see them coming into play in this vintage. And I'm sure we'll see them more in future vintages as well, in terms of really kind of honing down exactly how you want to, represent and show that terroir. So I think it's super exciting. It's definitely a very nice wine for me to be tasting before taking off over the Andes.
Yes.
I'm not complaining. This has been quite a luxurious pre-departure bevy.
That's great. I have to tell you that something that when we started this in 2018, obviously the first 100 barrels that we make some mistakes. We learn a lot from there. But now that we have been making barrels from that time, I can say that I thought I knew about barrels, but I knew a little bit about barrels. Now we know a lot more, because the quantity of details involved, not only where the oak come from, it's how you make the barrel, the time of toasting, flame or not flame, big flame or short flame, charcoal or not charcoal, temperatures, cup, medium cup, whole cup, all that gives you flavors, and then the details when you're making so I think it's another world, which is very interesting and very maybe I'm a little bit obsessed about some things, but it's like you do a little fine tuning and everything changes. It's amazing. And when you buy barrels, you don't have that kind of control. Of course, at the beginning with the first 100, it was a try and error.
Yeah, of course.
In fact, we learned from Tonnelier in France that he teaches how to make it, how everything. And now our process is totally different. So we change a lot of concept in order to go where we go. So it's a very, very unique world that I didn't know at all at the 7 years ago. I thought I knew, but it's not. It's totally different. It's very interesting. So it's we don't have much time because you have to go back to Argentina. Yeah, hopefully you will be soon here again.
I will. Yes, absolutely. I'm coming back for VIK Wine Lab.
No, I know. Yeah, I know. And that's a beautiful project also. The young generations are very motivated with that. Just to finish, let's talk about the market now. Of course, with your experience, what will be today something that we have to do as an industry? Wineries, winemakers, master of wines, journalists, everybody to make people to get more attention on wine and to jump into one and to make it more easy, for example, to understand what we have to do. What's your opinion about this? What do we have to do as an industry?
Well, that's a very big question when we don't have
we have 2 minutes.
Yeah. But I think there's multiple challenges in the industry today, and understand and feel for producers right now as they're going through an absolute storm of difficulties. And I know that, sales in Chile, exports in Chile have been a huge challenge in the last year and two, in fact. And a similar story in other countries around the world. And there's also this kind of downward trend of drinking less. But I think the bit that we can hold on to, the positive, is that there is a trend of drinking better. And so I think, we as an industry really need to focus on greater kind of positive communication, responsible communication, because the younger generations are seeking kind of healthy alternatives. And there's a lot of people going for lower alcohol wines or no alcohol at all. So we need to be responsible with our communication, but also, positively communicate the culture of wine, because it's not just, it's not just a beverage we drink at lunch or dinner. It's very much part of our heritage, part of our, social history. It's a product that unites families across the globe.
That's true.
It's the livelihood of, tens of thousands of families here in Chile and beyond. So I think we need to talk more about the kind of social, cultural aspect and the importance of enjoying quality wine in a responsible setting and how to do that. I think, that's the only way that we can kind of come, against this challenge that we're going through. It's not about kind of making more people drink more alcohol. It's about kind of ensuring that what they drink is really high quality, reflecting authentically the place, of kind of fair trade that really kind of helps those families and contributing to our culture and heritage surrounding wine and gastronomy.
Yeah, that's a good point. And how can we do this a little bit more easy because there are some people that they are already in this and they look for different flavors and they are looking for more quality, but to the ones that they are starting, how we make this a little bit more easy to understand? Well,
I think there's so much great kind of opportunities for communication out there, and I'm really pro anyone that's talking about wine, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram or through books or seminars. I think there's so many ways in which we can communicate and share. I think the most important thing is to just not be a snob. Yes. And just be nice and open about it and allow people to enjoy it at whatever level they're at, and meet them there, rather than try and don't make anyone feel uncomfortable about it. Yes. We all started somewhere. So I think that's the kind of the biggest thing that we can do is just make wine accessible and make everyone feel welcome.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. It has been an amazing conversation. Probably we can continue a lot more time, but we have to finish because you need to depart. And this is only 45 minutes. But thanks again. It has been amazing to have you here. We will have another type of podcast with another conversation. Maybe if you are available, we will be happy to have you again.
I would love to.
And,
we'll do a vertical or the tasting of the white when it comes out. I want to be part. I'm bagsying that space, shotgun for the
great. That's
first white.
Great. That's a deal. So we will talk about that. Thank you so much. Have a nice trip back to Argentina. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.